And welcome back to another episode of the Geek Centurions. It's me, your boy Eli.
It's me, Joe.
Yeah, if you notice, I'm kind of redecorating the room a bit, so it's gonna be like that. But
Yeah,
yeah,
if you're watching the video version of this, you'll just
there's no
notice
posters behind me.
there's a white background behind us, but not a problem if you're just listening to the audio version.
Which mostly you probably are.
Yeah.
I've seen the numbers. But yeah, we're back to talk about some Marvel stuff. We're talking about Werewolf by Night and the last episode of She-Hulk. We'll be coming back with Andor, and then we'll be mixing up stuff for the Halloween season. So that's something to look forward to. But yeah, we're gonna start off with Werewolf by Night. By the time of this recording, it's been long enough for us to really go into spoilers. So yeah, this is like a Marvel special presentation, which in other words, it's a Halloween special.
Yeah, I think it's in somewhat of the veins of like the one shots that they used to do for like the Blu-rays.
Mm-hmm.
You know, in a similar vein of that, just like a little small
Vignette
of like somewhere in the Marvel universe about just certain topics. Well, before I think those one shots were more like just random stuff that was happening. Like I think on the way to Thor's hammer, or I think there was one where like there was a couple that found an old Chitauri gun and they just started robbing banks with it. I think, but this is more in line of it's sort of the backdrop is like, hey, there's some supernatural stuff that's sort of around in the Marvel universe, and there's these groups of hunters, and like the main guy is a dude named Bloodstone because he has a mystical artifact called the Bloodstone that lets him, hunt and kill monsters and all that stuff. And the patriarch of that family is dead, and now the relic is up for grabs. It's sort of all these hunters from around the world, including their daughter Elsa, or his daughter Elsa, who's a bit estranged. It seems like she wasn't like that into it, but she's still like, hey, listen, it's technically mine, so I mean, I'm here for it.
Yeah, I would compare it to which by the way, this is a very short special. This is like under an hour. Like we're barely even hitting an hour really. So, but like the way I compare it to, especially the way it's shot, it's a lot of that old school like Halloween like movie, not Halloween. Think of Bela Lugosi's Dracula,
like old school horror kind of thing.
Old school Universal horror, the Wolfman, Frankenstein, Bride of Frankenstein, all those. But also a bit of like what was the name of that movie? It's a very like old school movie, black and white. It was like kind of like a similar vein, but not really to the theme of like sort of a hunt, rules of the game or something like that.
I think I know what you're talking about.
It's on the tip of your tongue.
Yeah, but in terms of that, it was. I think what you're thinking about is sort of was more of like just a group of people just coming to just hang out at like a lodge while they go on a hunting party kind of thing, and not really much happens. Here in this case, it's more of like. Whoever kills this monster gets the Bloodstone.
Yeah.
Now you all can go out and hunt it.
Yeah, and like there's not much to go into because there's not really much to talk about. It's very like I wouldn't say down to earth, like
it's a very simple plot.
A very simple plot of two monsters around, and I think if it wasn't if you didn't know from the trailers, I think you would be in a better spot than most, because they do introduce essentially two like mystical characters. One obviously being Werewolf by Night, and the other being Man Thing.
I was gonna say, was that
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's Man Thing, all right. It's good old Man Thing. It's just like. If no one knows who that is, it's sort of Marvel's, and this is one of those things where like Marvel and DC tend to copy of each other. And from what I recall, the creators of these two characters actually were roommates at one point. It's Marvel's Swamp Thing, so this mystical like nature monster, quote unquote, and it's like directly tied to the universe kind of stuff. Because like the Swamp Thing is connected to the Green, and it's sort of like this mystical sort of otherworldly thing going on. It's really like psychedelic as hell, man, and that's kind of like Man Thing's thing. So that's a character like one. They don't go that into it, but they just keep it simple as it's a monster,
Yeah.
and it's like okay, got it, monster. Don't need to go any more crazier in depth of like Man Thing.
Yeah, listen. If you want more information on Man Thing, check on the upcoming Man Thing show. No, I'm just kidding.
No, or read a goddamn comic, nerds.
But yeah, no, that is interesting. And I think I remember saying to you after I was finished watching it, like this feels like a primer, like an appetizer to what I assume Marvel wants to do in like introducing the supernatural elements of the Marvel comics into the MCU. You know, because I mean, we are getting Blade. You know, because he's a vampire. He hunts vampires and stuff. So that's gonna be just once. You know, we're introducing a brand new side of the Marvel universe in a way. So this is a nice little appetizer to all that stuff.
Yeah, and obviously, with the supernatural comes the horror. I'm not saying like all supernatural's horror, but like these were like Marvel's like supernatural / light or like horror takes, and they do a good job of it. Honestly, it's like I would equate it more to like a PG-13 horror.
Yeah, I mean, they do what they can with the
But like there are it's not gory or like ultra violent, but the kills are like whoa, that's.
And I think half the reason why it seems like they're able to get away with some of it is that for the most part the short is shot in all black and white to give it that old school vibe, the old school horror vibe. So
it's super cheesy like those movies too.
Yeah, it really harkens back to those era films, and I think it does a great job at putting homage to all that stuff.
Yeah, and like to know the director for this short do I want to call it a short? I don't call it a short.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it really is that probably is the best way to describe it. It is just a short film, basically.
He's actually mostly known for his composer. He's he composes music for movies, and this is his directorial like debut. And god dang, he knocked it out of the park.
That's neat. That's interesting.
Yeah. But yeah, like I said, there's really the only characters you should really pay attention to is Elsa Bloodstone, who is a character rich within the supernatural lore of Marvel, as well as Werewolf by Night, who like often has many different iterations. Different people have taken up that moniker because the idea is basically you're a werewolf.
Yeah, that seems about accurate.
Yeah, this one's Jack. I forget the last name. And of course you got Man Thing. Those are really the three characters you should really pay attention to. But yeah, no, what they do all three together is great. They have great chemistry. Going back to the kills, when Werewolf by Night shows up, whoa, do they take full advantage of like that the horror aspect. Like
yeah, you get a werewolf. You do all
he's gonna do werewolf stuff.
Yeah.
And I think it being in black and white sort of adds to the visual style of it, because there's a moment where like the Werewolf by Night, which we're gonna call him for now, is like hiding, and all you see is like the what do you call it, the reflective eye, when you
like the eye shine.
The eye shine, yeah, like that you tend to have with animals whenever you shine light on them. There's the moments of like that where you see him like in the background, and all you see is those eyes, and it's like, oh, that's clever. I like that.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, and the design of Werewolf by Night it depends on what your take on how a werewolf should look. It's very more human than.
I would say it definitely leans again back to the old Universal Monsters take of the werewolf. Of the Wolfman. For me, that's where I thought it felt very similar to. Now, granted, part of that could just be because of budgetary reasons.
Yeah, but you know what? It's good. I like it.
Yeah, I think it works for what it is. I obviously, there are people who have varying takes of what they feel like a werewolf should look like.
But this is a good one.
Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty solid way of making that look, right?
Like I've always been more privy to the more wolf looking than the man looking part of a werewolf. And if you guys don't know, I like werewolves are my favorite like monster creatures. Just I've always liked that. So I was already gonna enjoy the fact that we're making a werewolf by night. And I knew they were gonna go more of that human look for Werewolf by Night because that's kind of like the point.
Yeah.
Because Marvel has like Dracula, wolf, a werewolf, and I guess you can say Man Thing is their Frankenstein, but it's not really. But like they like to use up some of those Universal monster creatures, and yeah, no, they're clearly either based off those Universal monsters or kind of a mix of whatever kind of thing your pop culture thinks to think of Dracula and or vampires and or werewolves.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because I remember in one of the more recent Avengers runs, they're like, "Ah, yes, here's Dracula and his land of vampires," and like, it's very much like a interview with a vampire kind of thing. It's like, oh yeah, no, a lot of sex and debauchery going on.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of it, or a lot of implied. They don't go full into it. But it's like a lot of implications are going on.
Right.
But no, yeah, I I don't know what else I can say about it, but like it's really good. I can't. I think the only negative is that it's short.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that you'd be a negative for being
Because I want more.
yeah, because I think all intents and purposes, I think it's pretty solid all around. Yeah, I don't really see any major faults with Werewolf by Night. I think it does what it's supposed to do. It's again, I think setting up like a little bit of an appetizer of the supernatural in the Marvel universe, but also at the same time, it's its own like self-contained little story that like works really well.
And it's part of the universe, right? They at the beginning of the movie they like harkened like to yes heroes, but there's also monster hunters and stuff like that. Which kind of one of the reasons why I've been liking She-Hulk is like it kind of like expands the universe from like a very small scale. It's not anything big and grandiose. It's just like, no, this is just life. I mean, you got Mr. Immortal, who's like, what are you doing here? We're not explaining you. We're just saying you have this kind of power. All right, let's go. I'm all for it. Let's go. It's fun, and yeah, no, that's for me one of the best parts of it. And of course, the guys who are playing these characters are doing a great job. But yeah, no, I think that's about it for me because I would love to see more Werewolf by Night. like he's in it for a few minutes as werewolf as a werewolf, but like man, what I would love to see like a longer take, more in the style that they did this one, right? Because I don't Werewolf by Night never really delved with like the superheroes. I mean, he fought against like Moon Knight, but like my point to that being, it's like I don't want to see Jack going up like tagging along with, say, Captain America, unless they make Captain America a werewolf.
That's definitely a bizarre.
Did happen in the comics.
Yep, that's a thing. But yeah, no, it's a. I definitely get what you're saying. Like, there are some moments where it's like, yeah, it's just gonna be kind of weird for that to just happen. Not to say that like everything in the Marvel universe needs like crossover, I guess, right? But it's I think more of like certain things go in certain ways. Yeah, it would be probably interesting to see. Yeah, Moon Knight maybe showing up and like battling a werewolf. That'd be kind of neat, and maybe in his wheelhouse compared to just there's just a werewolf on the Avengers now. It's like, all right, well, I mean, that doesn't really seem very interesting. I mean, not to say that would be cool, but just sort of like, yeah, you got all these characters, and it's just a werewolf here. It's like, all right, well, that's a little. But yeah, no, I do overall liked Werewolf by Night. And it is kind of neat that Marvel is willing to just do a bunch of willing to do like one-offs, basically.
which is gonna be funny because of what we're gonna talk about next.
Yeah, in a weird way.
Yeah, if I were to give Werewolf by Night a rating, right, I would kind of give it like a 9 out of 10 for me. What about you?
Mm,
It's like for a short, it's like it's. I wouldn't say it's perfect, but it's really good. It's what I think a lot of people wanted from Marvel for for this recent phase of stuff, something different and something that doesn't essentially tie into like the bigger scheme of it, something that would fit for what they're trying to do.
yeah, no, I mean, I get.
This is one of the better ones.
I don't know. I'm hesitant to say a 9, mainly just because I think on the whole, when I look at it, I'm not saying that like its simplicity holds it back, but there is a little bit of like, yeah, there's just some characters here that like look neat, but there's like not really
Much to them.
much of them, I would probably just I'll probably give it like an 8.5. I mean, I really liked it. I do like how it is sort of a homage to all those old stuff, but at the same time, like I sort of like look at it and sort of like, yeah, it's probably not for everyone. You know, probably like some of the cheesy acting might throw some people off. Especially from that old lady.
Yeah, she hams it up.
She hamming that scene up.
She's awesome though.
I mean, yeah, I like her a lot. It's just that, like, for some people, it's like, oh, this is weird,
This lady's annoying.
Yeah. So I mean, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I really liked it. I just think, as a whole, it's a solid.
I think for me, it's because they hardened into those old school like Universal monster movies, which I do enjoy, and I am like, bitch made for werewolf stuff.
No, yeah, I understand that. Like if you're into the horror angles and sort of the harking back to that old school stuff. And then, yeah, obviously, this short is definitely going to be for you.
Yeah, this isn't anything like, I would say, American Werewolf in London. Where just like, I think the universally agreed peak of werewolf movies. But like, this is like a good, like, it's different. It's nice.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, no, I totally agree with your rating. And I think that's a good place to end the conversation for Werewolf by Night. Go watch it; it's really good. It'll if you need like an hour of to waste time, that's good for it. Not just saying it's a waste of time, but it's like something good to watch.
Yeah, if you have the time to spare, an hour or two, yeah, go watch Werewolf by Night. It's pretty good.
Yeah, and so we'll head into She-Hulk. This is the final episode, the ultimate episode. Not the ultimate, well, because it's penultimate, ultimate, whatever. The final episode of the season. I think they're teasing more to come.
I mean, yeah, it definitely seems like they are slightly teasing a second season, but yeah, who knows?
Well, this one has a lot of stuff going into that, and we're not gonna really talk about. But I'll say this: the opening joke is they recreate the introduction of the old Incredible Hulk TV show. With Bill Bixby and Lou Ferrigno. And god damn it, they got a smile out of me.
Yeah, I won't lie. It's kind of a funny little side thing, because even I think they because I think they even get like an actual different actress to play She-Hulk.
Yeah.
Instead of just doing the CG. Which, it's a neat little. Like I said, it's an homage. It's probably like.
I feel like if they don't do this, but if they ended it this way, where it's either Hulk or Jen, right? They're just like, well, it's time for me to go home. I'll see you guys later. And she's just like walking off, trying to hitch a ride, and then it's the piano playing.
Yeah.
I think that would have made it perfect. That would have tied it in all well together.
No, yeah, I get that. That would be a very funny sort of call back to that. But yeah, it is. Yeah, I think this episode is probably the most meta when it comes to.
Oh no, yeah. If you're wondering like what the hell was She-Hulk doing throughout this episode, this was She-Hulk to a T. Like this is the most accurate She-Hulk has been. Like I've talked to this before. Like there's literally a panel, you can probably look it up online. A couple panels where she just literally just messes around with like literally the panel work, like the line work and all that stuff. It's just like literally like, but Jen, like this is a page where it's like, but Jen, Jen, what are we gonna do? How are we gonna get there? It's like easy. I'll just open this door and it'll lead us through the next panel. Or like she's like trying to pull out the panel and someone's trying to stop her. Mm-hmm. She's like telling the writer, "Yo, what is this about?" Kind of stuff. Because that's essentially what happens in this episode. Not to go too much into it, but essentially, She-Hulk herself, who breaks the fourth wall. Yes, she's thinking, like, okay, what's happening? This makes no sense.
Yeah.
In which it's essentially a recreation of that panel where she's like yelling at the writer.
Yeah, it's a very, like I said, super meta. She not only talks to the audience, but she actually does, get a little, angry.
Yeah.
At these writers, like, hey, where's this all leading to? Why is this all happening? Like, why is there a reason here? Come on, guys.
Why is everything wrapping up so weirdly?
Like, why is it all these random freaking plot lines coming in and like doesn't? It's like we got too many cooks in the kitchen. What's going on here, guys?
Which is like, okay, you who has studied film know how a lot of things go into film and television. Did any of those jokes about the writer's room, producers and all that stuff, did that make any sense to you? Or did like it touch home? Because I've seen people talk about like, oh, this they nailed this part, kind of stuff.
Looking back on it, yeah, probably. I mean, it is sort of. I would say when it came to the writing room segment, yeah, it is sort of a collaborative effort kind of thing. You got multiple people just thinking of ideas and stuff. And, I think there was like a wall that just shows like all the episodes and like how they split them into like the 3 acts.
Mm-hmm.
And then like you had like note cards or whatever. It's like, I think with like the top being like the main points, and then like as you put further note cards to like further expand on details, I think. I mean that looking back at it, it does. There are probably like little hints and nods that are sort of like, yeah, that's kind of funny for me, for someone who's into that stuff or who probably has worked in that sort of environment, But as because I think that's a sort of at least how like looking back at it, it's like I think that makes sense. And there are like those little nods there. As far as producing things though, I don't really. I guess maybe the one joke with a certain guy whose name starts with a K. I mean that's a little funny to me, I guess.
Well, the joke about it, right, is that, and I don't want to go that deep into like what the joke is, but like, let's just say they've been listening to the criticisms. Now, whether or not they'll do anything with the criticisms is totally up to
Totally up to the people in charge and all that stuff. Because this does sort of like it does sort of hint at like some of the some of the various critiques of the Marvel of the MCU over these past couple years. Now, granted, I'm not entirely sure because again, these shows have been written and like filmed like months before like the current trend of like critiquing of Marvel, like their CGI, the overworked CGI artists and all that stuff, and like how some people feel certain ways about the Marvel universe and stuff like that. And I feel like this episode seems like it touches on that, but like to be fair, these episodes were written months in advance, so it doesn't seem like it's a direct response. That's why I think in the last episode, when it came to those that online trolling stuff bit, like it seems like it's topical, but it's more of like them just writing like, oh yeah, this happens to people sometimes. It seems more like a thing that happens in the show, but then it turns out it starts to happen in real life kind of thing. Vibe. So I think this is kind of in that similar wheelhouse, I feel, of like.
Yeah, because like earlier before she starts breaking the fourth wall, which I know we're focusing on a little ahead of time, they do go into the whole like who are these like internet trolls who are ruining Jen's life? And there's a lot of stuff that like while it seems a little like cheesy and corny, you can totally see that happening in real life. They kind of it's not that they were like ahead of it, but like what's the word I'm looking for?
They were like using real world examples of it happening to
Yes.
people because it has happened. That stuff has happened to actors or celebrities or whatever that just sort of get hit with the outrage mob online. So I guess they wanted to do something similar with She-Hulk. Now, granted, the fact that there is a bit of a outrage mob for She-Hulk is a little one of those like it feels like a Simpsons did it kind of vibe. You know what I mean?
How so?
Well, I mean, like, because sometimes people will like to make a joke that the Simpsons predict the future and stuff.
Okay, okay.
Even though most of the times the people are stretching the truth very thin. Like, I think I'm trying to remember the most prominent example of that.
Pass me water.
I'm trying to remember the most strange example of that. I think it was when they were like watching the Nobel Peace Prize thing, and they had bingo cards of all the people who could win a Nobel Prize, and the fact that one of those guys won a Nobel Prize was like that's the Simpsons predicting the future. Except that guy won it like 4 years after that episode came out. So is that really predicting it, or is it just like, hey, it's the Simpsons looking at people who could potentially win a Nobel Prize, and and then like the one guy doesn't win it that year, but then he wins it like maybe a couple years later. Is that really predicting the future?
No, that's just you.
It feels like cherry picking certain things. I feel like there's multiple examples of that. Like there's probably tons of videos I think I've seen. Well, at least there's definitely a video out there that probably explains like, yeah, no, the Simpsons aren't predicting the future. It's just you and your biases just focusing on certain things. Actually, I think the best one I think off the top of my head right now is Simpsons predicting a certain world event that happened in the year 2001.
Oh no, yeah, that one was just like
That's just an image of just the numbers.
Yeah.
And the fact that the episode just happens to go to New York, but then absolutely nothing happens.
Yeah.
That even remotely relates to that certain event.
It's just like when people compare it to, and we're going to some dumb conspiracy stuff, right?
Yeah.
It's like, oh, 9/11, 911, the emergency number. And I'm like, but that's not the emergency number in like every other place.
I mean,
right? Like it's not.
That's one of those like low ball like
coincidences.
Yeah, it's just like, yeah, that's just.
Yeah, no, coincidence happens, guys. You gotta remember that.
Yeah, so in a similar vein, She-Hulk, the character, having to deal with online trolls that don't like her, somehow predicts certain minority voices of, dissent, like people who don't like the show, sort of like being in an uproar in a similar vibe, which is like, again, it's just very weird. I don't think it was like intentional. It's one of those things like, hey, this happens sometimes to people nowadays. Well, let's just write it in. And it's like, oh, wait, it's happening to our show now. That's a little...
That's funny.
Yeah.
I think what it is, right, it's that those kind of people have always been around. Like, you can go back to, like, say, 2016 Ghostbusters, right? However you feel about that movie, yeah, that movie got a lot of unnecessary flack. And so they just looked at that and, like, let's put some of that in this because it'll be funny, right? Because it'd be funny, like...
Yeah, it's funny looking back at it.
Yeah.
And then it's like, oh, wait, there's still people like that out there.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Because, like, people were acting about that way for the show since the beginning, but it's also, like, it's not egregious. It's not bad. And also you're trying to, like, equate it to something that's, like, not exactly true. Mm-hmm. So, like, people are like, oh, but Bruce went through all this different trauma. And I'm like, well, this is a different iteration of the Hulk. He didn't go through any of that trauma. We're assuming he went through some trauma because of how it is in the books. Because as much as I love the Hulk in comics, this Hulk in the films, well, I feel it's all right for the interpretation they're going for. isn't accurate to what the Hulk is. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that's why I never had a problem with that first episode that everyone was like kind of complaining about, right? Or like when people were complaining about the twerking scene, because like everyone was like, "Oh my god," Stan Lee's like rolling in his grave. Some people would say, but it's also like this is such a non-consequential scene.
Yeah, it's
It
literally an after credit scene.
meaning it matters nothing.
Yeah, it's just there to just have fun.
Yeah, and
Basically.
that's what all it is. It was there to have fun. And you can say it looked bad, yeah, sure, because CGI ain't that great. But like, there was just two girls having fun, man.
Yeah, it's just a weird friggin' I don't know. It's just a bizarre take people have. I feel like a lot of it is just cherry picking of like trying to find something to be angry about, which I think is just like not to get too deep into it at this point, but. I don't know, it just seems like it's just a thing with like everything nowadays. These shows, where it's like people always want to find something to complain about with the show.
Yeah, and it's really annoying. I've always been privy to it. I've talked to you about before. Like, I rather not focus on anything that makes me upset. If it's like I don't want to give it the energy.
Yeah, like there's too much time in the world to.
Life is short.
Yeah, to devote your life to just hating like certain things,
Yeah, it's like
just move on.
Yeah, I'm just like if it's bad, I'm like, oh well, that was bad. I guess I'll just move on with my life.
Yeah.
Like, do you know how many times I have to deal with stuff like that? I'm like, oh well, that's.
You know how many freaking like bad stuff, like bad shows that come and go that people just forget about eventually.
Yeah. It's just the nature of the beast, man. You just gotta like roll with the punches. But no, to go back to like the She-Hulk storyline, like she goes to see Emil Blanc, and then we find out who was in charge of Intelligentsia, and it's like, oh, this asshole.
Oh, this guy who's always been kind of a weird character in the background of stuff. Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, yeah, and even like that's kind of the beginning of where like really where Jen's like really we're kind of doing this. This seems kind of dumb.
This is all kinds of no.
Yeah, which again leads to the fourth wall break, and I think it's a great fourth wall break. It doesn't really subvert your expectations or whatever, which I kind of like hate saying that now. Because like, do you want your do you like?
Because it feels very attached to like certain shows that like seem like they do a lot of subverting the expectations, only just because they want to and not for any good reason.
Yeah, and it's just like no, it's just more like Jen would if she can fourth wall break this to this level, she would have a problem with the way it ends, right?
Yeah.
And so like she makes it like no, let's just focus on this. Let's not make it like a big dang spectacle. This is not meant to be a big dang spectacle. Let's just keep it grounded. And they're like, you know what? Good on you. And so the episode ends in a nice way, I might add. Introduction of a character I didn't think they were going to introduce.
Yeah, Bruce comes back, and they introduce a certain character he brings back with him, which, yeah, it's very much like, yeah, this character's here now, let's move on. Like, wait, what?
I'm gonna tell you this right now. The way the MCU has just treated this character is the same way the comics treat him. Oh yeah, you're a thing.
Well, into the background you go.
Yeah. All right, that's it. It's that the Simpsons scene where like both throws Barney out there, and then
come back in.
Yeah, it goes back in because that's what's gonna happen.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, that's like a good place to end that episode. Everything looks like it's coming. Everything gets wrapped up together. I think the end quote of She-Hulk is the best, especially now considering like a lot of certain stuff that's been going on recently. Well, this is me connecting it to real world, but that's here and there. She-Hulk says that she's gonna do her job defending people who need it. Both as a lawyer and as a superhero.
Yeah, I mean, it is a nice sort of like end point for She-Hulk.
Mm-hmm.
Like she, like yeah, I'm gonna do the superhero thing because I think like what I should do, but yeah, I'm also gonna take people to court. I got my two lanes here. I will say, as a whole, I do like She-Hulk.
Yeah, I think it's one of the better. It's not the greatest now. I'm not saying it's like peak television or whatever, but I think this is one of their better shows.
I think it's been a solid show. Obviously, I think it has issues mainly in the visuals department. Which
Some of the story aspects aren't strong here and there, but as an overall idea of what She-Hulk is, I think this is a good one. And I think most of it just comes from not terrible writing but terrible execution.
I guess I can I can see that. You know, they probably had certain ideas that they sort of liked, but it just wasn't that well executed within the storyline. I mean,
and you see it yourself. A bunch of writers are in the room. Sometimes they'll come up with something. It sounds like a good idea, but landing it's really hard. Because you have a clashing of ideas there.
And I think, and there's a lot of compromising as well, and sometimes, that doesn't always, it can lead to either some good things or some bad things, or just things that don't turn out as well. And I do think the ending itself with She-Hulk doing all this fourth wall breaking, I feel like it's probably going to be a make it or break it for a lot of people. Sort of either for some people it's okay, so we acknowledge that there were mistakes made or whatever, or some of these storylines weren't exactly going the way we wanted to, and we're just gonna wrap it all up anyway, or whatever.
Yeah, the just the way even She-Hulk herself is yeah, this doesn't make any sense. You can kind of say itself, it's kind of it's sort of not smart writing, but clever, where she herself acknowledges something hasn't been making any sense, because that's the whole point.
Yeah.
And some people might be oh, that's just being, you're being you're giving an excuse. But nah, man, if it's intentional, it's intentional. If it wasn't, it wasn't. I might be giving an excuse, but I'm also gonna be right. But I don't know if I'm making any sense. I'm not. But yeah, no, this I do think She-Hulk is one of the better ones. I would, if I were to give the whole show a rating, it'd probably be an 8 out of 10. I think it's a really one of their more better shows. I think it's a show that is intentionally made to be a show, and not a 4-hour long movie.
No, I get that. Yeah, it definitely has all those right pacings. And yeah, I think obviously I think it's sort of in the middle of the road for me, honestly. Again, I liked it well enough. There probably are other shows that I like a bit better. But what I would say this is that I think Jen says it best in the final episode. Where this is a comedic lawyer show. Let's keep it that way, and I think that sort of speaks true to the show itself. It definitely didn't seem like it was going to be, again, a lot. I think for most of these Marvel, Disney Plus shows, they weren't there to expand or add the big piece of this is where it's all going to lead to kind of moments. We certainly had shows for that, like Loki, WandaVision, Captain America, fucking the Winter Soldier. A lot of those shows had the little tidbits that were setting up essentially the future MCU stuff that was going to happen and whatever. But then you get other shows like Moon Knight, which it's in its own thing. She-Hulk, yeah, it expands the universe, but in a very small scale.
It's what She-Hulk should be. It's now, granted, you can also have her be these big Avenger level stuff, but also she's made for this kind of stuff too. Mostly for this. It's Spider-Man can be as high with the Avenger and as low as with Daredevil.
Yeah, she is just one of those characters that can move in between a lot of those story beats, because obviously, yeah, she's a Hulk. You know, she has that strength. She can do that stuff. But she's also a lawyer, and she, you know, can be put down into that sort of street level and like handling these various shenanigans of like superhero lawyering and stuff like that.
I think that's the thing about it, right? Like both both, like, yes, they can do both, and you know that in the show often the best part was like the comedic lawyer bits. Like I'm like the episode where like I forget his name, Pug had to defend
The other guy,
yeah, and he's like, how the hell did you deal with this guy?
Jesus, this guy's an idiot.
Yeah. And how that all ties in, and then like the other part with like Wong and was it Madison?
Yeah, with the, you know,
And then like the other, like those are like some of the best stuff. Even like the episode where she had to like meet up with these guys because with Blonsky and talks to all these dudes, and like, you know, just got like this nice scene of her like being honest with herself. Those are, I think, one of the best things about the show, and I'm so glad that they kept it that way for the most part, and not have. Well, oftentimes they have the big fight. They have fight scenes, right?
yeah.
The Daredevil one was an example of that, but like, it never got too big or too crazy.
Yeah, no, I get that. You know, it's overall, you know, I think She-Hulk was a fine show. I think it did all the things it wanted to do right. I mean, it had its issues, but overall, I find it enjoyable. You know, I liked how it all sort of came together at the end. You know, so I mean, that's sort of my take on it.
Yeah, no, I do enjoy with how it turned out, and hopefully there is a season 2 with her just as doing as much as the crazy stuff that she did in this episode, or, you know, not too much, because that's probably a lot for the VFX department.
And there were a lot of jokes about that with the VFX. So, but yeah, you know, overall,
yeah, or, you know, you can also, you know, spend time making more Werewolf by Night level stuff.
And yeah, you know, Marvel has the capacity to do all those things if it wants.
But anyways, that's the end of the episode. If you guys enjoyed, be sure to follow us on all social medias, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. We're most active on Instagram, where you find a link tree to all the podcast sites we're officially part of, like Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Pandora. We're all the where those were we're most that, you know, you can find us audio wise. If you want to find us in more the visual sense, we have a YouTube where you can like, comment, subscribe on there, and you'll also find us. Well, that's actually it. You know, all the podcast sites, YouTube. Be sure to support us on Patreon. It's really just there for any form of support. And yeah, guys, if you need anything else, you know, we'll talk about any of the show, and let us know. It's been me, your boy Eli.
To me, Joe.
Yeah, guys, have a good one. Peace.